I'll introduce myself first. For those of you that I don't know, thanks so much for taking time out of your evening and this week before Thanksgiving to spend some time with us. I'm Tizzy Lockman. I'm a state senator representing the 3rd District in Wilmington, and I am the founding co-chair for the Reading Consortium for Educational Equity. And the purpose of tonight is for us just to make sure that we are offering as much information and clarity on our process and where things currently stand with the Reading Consortium for Educational Equity. And our primary goal, after I go through a handful of slides, just offering that clarity, is really just to listen. This is a listening session. It's not a Q&A, so I won't be doing any back and forth or anything like that, but we will make sure that in the chat is provided our form for receiving feedback. And then, of course, we'll spend as much time as needed taking your verbal public comments on this call this evening in response to the slides that I'm going to share. So there's no new information that's being provided if you've been taking part in prior meetings. This is all just sort of a repeat of process information that we have shared at our prior meetings, but we know that with so much going on in everybody's lives and the school year and all of that, everyone doesn't get an opportunity to participate in every single meeting that we have. And so we wanted to make sure to provide these couple of additional opportunities to just continue to reshare that and make space for you to have your say as well. And this, of course, as you probably noticed when you came in, is being recorded. That way we will have this information shared on our platforms, as well as the public comments that are being recorded here to make sure that all of our members are able to listen in and hear what you have to say as well. My co-chair, Matt Den, is on here, so he'll be able to listen in. And I think I saw at least one of our consortium members, Tika Hartsock, and I'm sure there are more because there's a lot of folks coming into the room. So I apologize if I can't call everybody out, but let's just keep things moving because the most important thing here is to hear from you. So as you saw on that previous slide, you're muted when you came in. I'm not sure that you can unmute yourself without the help of our moderator, but you will get that chance when we come around to the public comment portion to ask to be unmuted and take the time provided to offer your comment. So I'll just talk a little bit about why we are here and what the Reading Consortium is all about. Very, very basic vision here that you see on this slide, which is just, obviously our goal, which I think is shared by everyone on this call, that we want all of our students to have access to great schools, to have that high quality education that all Delaware students should have, no matter where they are coming from. Our belief and our theory of change that school district boundary change is not the be all and end all solution, but that it is a very crucial first step to move us towards a more coherent system that can achieve that. All part of this larger effort to improve our schools, enabling a stronger and less fragmented community of support for education. Next slide, please. So the Reading Consortium itself, if you are not already familiar with us, so we were established through legislation in 2019, and our mission is all spelled out in Delaware Code, that we are set up to recommend policies and practices to state level decision makers. So that's, of course, the General Assembly, my colleagues there, as well as the governor, with an eye towards educational equity. So any policies that we can potentially change and ways that we can allocate resources to support that, that's what we have set about making recommendations around. And of course, that ultimate goal is seeing outcomes improve for all of our students in the city of Wilmington and northern Newcastle County. So we do have that specific geographic scope of Wilmington and northern Newcastle County for which to be making recommendations. So we were established by two pieces of legislation, and there was an additional piece of legislation subsequently passed to update the time period in which we could make redistricting recommendations. Again, this is just about expanding opportunities for every student to have access to a world-class education. Next slide, I think, is important. Educational equity is part of our name. I think people can ask, what are we even talking about with that buzzword? It was important to us to make sure that we all understood collectively as a consortium what we meant by that term. So when we first started in 2019, we actually created our own collective definition with the couple of dozen members that we have. And this is what we came up with to best reflect what all the stakeholders who are part of the Reading Consortium membership saw as what educational equity actually is. So you can see it here. I will read it as well. So basically what we define educational equity as for our purposes is that it requires safe, secure, and student-focused learning environments where every student is intentionally provided access to the support, resources, and opportunities they need to reach their full academic and social potential within and out of the classroom. So that's our definition that we use to check ourselves when we are making recommendations. Next slide. So a little bit of historical context for the redistricting portion of our work. We know that there are numerous schools, 18 in the city of Wilmington, serving slightly more than 11,000 students. We have seen our community members as school leaders working together to improve education where it has struggled, specifically for Wilmington students. And the overall assessment in the 20 plus, I guess 25 plus years of examination is that the system is complex and a more unified way to support students is needed. So we have had several groups precede us from 2001 up until this point. So from the Wilmington Neighborhood Schools Committee, to a task force that was also legislatively administered in 2008, to the work of WEAC and WEAC in 2015 and 2016. All of these commissions made similar recommendations that consolidation was necessary to move forward. So the work of the Reading Consortium is really just standing on the shoulders of work that has been repeated for more than 2 decades, and a lot of research and reporting has been generated in those 2 decades plus prior to the work that we've undertaken. Next slide, please. So what you see here is the current status quo that we have in terms of our district configurations. The little black squiggly lines you can see are our municipal boundary lines. Of course, the largest one along sort of the middle right area near the river being Wilmington, but you can also certainly recognize, I'm sure, other municipalities that you know, whether it's Newark or Newcastle, Ellesmere, and so forth. The only one which you see crossing multiple district lines is Wilmington, and that was, of course, done intentionally initially. And then you also see that we have contiguous school districts for Brandywine here in the green, the pink color for Red Clay, and yellow for Colonial. But when you look at the purple representing Christina's school district, you see what is a rare condition for school districts, that you have the area separated by a significant distance without being connected. So we would describe that as a discontiguous school district, which is not something that you see very much in the country anymore and has been a persistent source of concern. Next slide, please. So in terms of our process in the 6 years that we've been working as the Reading Consortium for Educational Equity, we have been doing a range of different things in terms of making recommendations and supporting the allocation of resources to support students in Wilmington and Northern Newcastle County. We did turn back to the work of redistricting a couple of years ago. And in order to advance that, one of the first significant steps that we took after a lot of deliberation, was to approve what we call our interim plan. So the first step to guide us on the path to ultimately having a fully developed plan for redistricting that we will in turn submit to the State Board of Education, and if approved by them, would go on to the General Assembly. This first step was approved by our consortium in May of 2024. And what that interim plan did was it set up a framework for our development of a plan, by pointing us in the direction of how we should narrow the scope of that work. So we started with what consortium members could agree upon, kind of as the standard for what a potential redistricting proposal would look like, starting with an agreement that we believed that no more than 2 school districts should serve City of Wilmington students. So where we currently have 4 of the large geographic school districts, as we saw on the map, serving Wilmington students, that should be reduced to no more than 2, and that the Christina School District should no longer serve the city as a discontiguous school district, so that the Christina School District should not be one of those 2 districts serving the city moving forward, or 2 or fewer districts, as we say. We also set ourselves up for an 18-month timeline for planning from May to December of 2025. I would say we are not right on track with that, but we'll get a little bit more into where things stand now with our revised timeline. It also defined 3 subcommittees that would work to develop that full plan. And that full plan has to be made up of what we call 13 stipulations. So that's something that comes directly out of the Delaware Code that is spelled out for what a full redistricting plan has to contain. I will walk us through exactly what those 13 stipulations require for us to answer in a full plan a couple of slides down the road. We also had the request made by members of the consortium that a landscape analysis be completed that would take into account factors outside of the school space that has an impact on students' educational outcomes, so that is something that could be considered when we get to the planning and implementation phases of this work. And then we also have what has sometimes been nicknamed big ideas, but I will refer to moving forward as further ideas for consideration in regards to other policy reforms that we would recommend happen hand in hand with redistricting. Again, acknowledging that the moving of district lines is an important catalyst, but only part of the process of reaching towards reforms for a stronger school district and school system, I should say, in northern Newcastle County for all of the students involved. Next slide, please. So I'm going to break these down based on the 3 subcommittees that we have. So you will see what each one of our subcommittees is charged with helping develop when we get to the point of drafting the full plan. We have a subcommittee focused on operational impacts. That subcommittee will be looking at these stipulations from code having to do with the orderly and minimally disruptive reassignment of students affected by boundary change. So figuring out the best way to conduct reassignment in a way that meets that standard. The second is really just sort of guidance for us that the plan has to ensure that students are able to complete attendance at the school that they currently attend prior to boundary change. We have to address student transportation issues, of course, as well as defining the timetable for implementation of any and all elements, of a redistricting plan, as well as designating responsibility for the accomplishment of those elements. Next slide, please. We have a fiscal impacts subcommittee who are charged with looking at what resources would be required to support any transition and support for particular groups of vulnerable students. We see here specifically it talks about schools with high concentrations of low-income students and English learners. It also charges the subcommittee with looking at the distribution of capital assets and any financial obligations or process for such distribution, and also a stipulation that funding statewide and locally would facilitate effective implementation of such a plan in a manner that will ultimately be positive for educational outcomes for all students impacted by a plan. So next slide. And then we have a subcommittee that is focused on community engagement issues. So making sure to be taking into consideration implications for a wide range of stakeholders. You can see listed here, educators, administrators, other personnel, particularly as it pertains to any adjustments that would have to occur with local collective bargaining agreements, ensuring that there's continuing engagement throughout all phases, but particularly transitional phases of any redistricting that might occur. Number 3 is the landscape analysis that I mentioned prior. So that's that assessment of educational needs of students to help us better understand resources that would be required to meet those needs. We also have a stipulation asking for us to consider anything that would need to occur as regards secondary education options, perhaps the addition of additional secondary schools. So people talk a lot about, does Wilmington need another high school? That's what's implied there, that would be considered. And then this is something that's actually been part of the purview of the Reading Consortium for Educational Equity ongoing, honestly, back to WEIC times before we took up that mantle, which is ongoing monitoring and evaluation of the impact and outcome of implementation. Just sort of the status of the impacted students there would be studied in an ongoing manner. And I believe that gets us to that's the 13 stipulations at a very high level of what a plan has to contain to be considered a fully drafted plan. So where do we currently stand with all of this? We have been hosting a range of different opportunities for people to engage, including retreats for those 3 subcommittees to talk through preliminary stages of their work. We've had 3 major subcommittee retreats. Those have been public happenings. We have continued to meet as a full body, generally speaking, subsequently to those retreats to talk about what had occurred at them and to affirm and continue to move forward based on conclusions that had been reached. We hosted in September a community co-interpretation event with our vendor, American Institutes for Research, who conducted the landscape analysis to talk about what they had found, to have a special presentation of students who were engaged as youth researchers to talk about their experience in the schools and help us have a better understanding of what some gaps might be, where additional supports would be needed. And next slide, please. So some folks have asked, how did we end up with the 3 options that I'm about to talk you through? When we took that 2 or fewer, not including Christina School District, we were able to identify 9 designs that met that definition. And we have worked in the time since to try to narrow that down so that we can enable ourselves to do the deeper analysis that a lot of folks are quite logically asking for. You can see here the retreats and full body meetings I previously mentioned, showing kind of the cadence of when we were discussing models and how many kind of cleared through to be considered in a more deep manner at the subsequent retreat. So we went from 9 to 6 and then 6 to 3, and ultimately that is where we currently stand. After our July meeting, where we voted to affirm the 3 options that were still on the table after hearing some of the research and discussion. Okay, so what are those 3 redistricting models that we are still considering on the table? We have what we call the Brandywine and Red Clay School District, sometimes referred to as a river plan. I'll show maps of what that could mean. A Metropolitan Wilmington School District model, and then a Northern Newcastle County Consolidated School District model. And let's talk a little bit more about what those mean. So what a Brandywine and Red Clay School District, so those 2 districts sharing governance of the city of Wilmington. would look like exactly that. So we would shift boundaries so that those two school districts would be the sole large districts that would be functioning in the city of Wilmington. We have not yet defined specifically how that would look. These are some examples. The river model that you see in the middle, well, on the left-hand side is what it currently looks like. And the one in the middle is what has sometimes been referred to as the river plan, where the boundary runs along the river. And then you'll see on the right-hand side what has been termed the modified river model, which would allow the Red Clay School District to maintain its footprint that's north of the river. So like where Warner and Shortledge schools currently are. So these are just concepts. We're still at a phase of where we're dealing more in at that conceptual level. Next slide. A metropolitan Wilmington school district would consolidate districts serving students that are currently within the geographic boundaries of the city of Wilmington and Brandywine School District and Red Clay Consolidated School District. It would consolidate them into one school district, and then obviously, as in the prior example, you would no longer have the Christina School District or the Colonial School District in that footprint. And this is a map of what the boundary around that would potentially look like, would look like, consolidating the city and what we currently know as Red Clay and Brandywine school districts. And the third model that we are considering would be a consolidation of all of the northern Newcastle County school districts. So that is all of the four large districts. Appoquinimink School District is not considered part of our purview at northern Newcastle County, so that is obviously excluded. And so they would become one singular large district for all of the northern portion of the county. And that's what that map would look like. Okay, next slide. I'm not going to go deeply into the social drivers landscape analysis that I've mentioned, but as with all of the materials for all of the work and the meetings that we have done, all of this is available online on our website that we maintain. It's solutionsfordelawareschools.com. That can hopefully be put in the chat and maybe even a direct link to that landscape analysis for anyone who'd be interested in reading that. I believe it's some 50 plus pages, but a lot of good information in there that has helped with our deliberation. So I mentioned the section of our work also approved in our interim plan and affirmed subsequently in our July meeting are further recommendations for action. So we established an additional subcommittee at our most recent meeting, and that is called our Discretionary Recommendations Committee, and that's looking at programmatic possible recommendations that could be made outside of changing district boundary lines. And what that committee has done is met really pretty rigorously through the fall with a goal of making sure that there would be some fiscal notes, so to speak. So the cost implications of what pursuing some of these ideas might be, so that the consortium can make an educated decision about whether or not to incorporate any of these recommendations alongside a redistricting recommendation. So that includes wraparound services and enhancements to those, looking at ways to ensure we are recruiting and retaining our educators, looking at supports for our 9th to 12th grade students, with an eye towards making sure that they're getting all the way to graduation, looking at pre-K expansion, and also taking a look at some potential choice and charter reforms that could be supportive to the overall work, as well as the implementation of specialized programs in schools. So sort of like magnet programs with specialized interests that might come alongside other recommendations. Next slide. So our planning timeline in terms of where we are now. As I mentioned, we are sharing information about the 3 redistricting options that are still under consideration. We will be hosting another audience like this tomorrow to talk through this again and gather more public comment. And then we will be making presentations to school board meetings at school board, special school board meetings that are going to be set up in early December. We need to narrow these options and select one as a consortium so that the full drafting of the final plan can be completed for submission to the State Board of Education. We will be taking action on that at our December full body meeting, which occurs on December 16th. And then that's when the full plan drafting can begin in the new year. Next slide, please. And you can see more about what the process looks like from there. We do have a requirement in code for public hearings related to the final plan, and those are set to occur in February to enable us to then submit a final plan subsequent to that. And you can see that we have that currently proposed for February so that the State Board of Education can go through their process of review. And should it move forward, then any final plan that we submit has to be considered by the full General Assembly before it can advance to be implemented. Okay, so talked longer than I even necessarily would have wanted to, but hopefully that offered some clarity for folks. And so I think at this point, I am going to stop talking, and we would like folks who have any comments that you'd like to offer to raise your hands. Elena is going to be able to unmute you and give you time to respond. And again, as I mentioned, we're not going to be able to engage in any like back and forth Q&A, but certainly if you have questions that you want to raise, I would encourage you to do that. And also to utilize the community feedback form that has been shared at the top, and I think will be shared again so that we can make sure that we're collecting all of the questions and all of the comments, and that we're able to then address those moving forward. So I will mute myself and see what comments people might like to offer. Thanks very much for listening for all of that time. Okay, Elena, I think we are good to start taking comment.
Yeah, so there's a raised hand from Maureen Stone. I'll unmute you.
Elena, I just wanted to jump in. Stephen had his hand up before Maureen.
Okay.
Sorry, Maureen.
You can go.
Just saw his was definitely first.
All right, thank you, Haley.
Yeah, sorry.
You can go, Stephen.
Thank you for that. Thank you, Senator Lockman. I really appreciate the presentation. One of the I wonders that come up for me, especially if the metropolitan one, where I guess it's Brandywine and Red Clay consolidate, what is the consortium's viewpoint regarding salaries? Currently, Brandywine is higher than ours, than Red Clay. So what would be the viewpoint of how are we going to equalize those salaries? Obviously, we're not going to lower Brandywine. So what is the tax base? What money how are we going to equalize those salaries? Because Brandywines are higher. So if we were going to do that, that is a question that I'm getting from some of my folks regarding, those salary implications.
All right, thank you. Next is Maureen Stone.
Hi, thank you for this presentation. It was pretty clear. My question is, not academic, but more administrative. At some point, you're going to, like call it, blow up both districts, and you're going to have a new superintendent and new staff. How do you protect let's say, Red Clay hiring manager from hiring people he knows and locking out the people who work in Brandywine? Because I feel like people tend to hire those that they're familiar with. And I don't know if that process has been looked at yet. Thank you.
Thank you. Next there's a raised hand from Dr. Nooney.
Good evening, everyone. I just have a comment as a parent of a child who is a participant of the Brandywine School District's Autism Support Program. My hope is that when these considerations are made to adjust the current framework for the districts, that your committee takes into account the specialized programs that are being offered by the different districts, and that the current levels of fidelity that are maintained within the different programs can be different school districts can be maintained. Um, Oftentimes students who may not have the biggest voices are left out of these discussions. So it's my hope that this is being considered in addition to the comment that was just made regarding staffing and the potential loss in certain positions. That could definitely impact schools when you are attempting to go from multiple school districts to a potentially one framework. That could be dramatic. So I'm just all for systematic changes, so that it can be determined whether or not the process is being effective, um, before just doing a complete overhaul. So that's my comment and my feedback.
Thank you. Those are all the raised hands that have seen, but if anyone else would like to offer their public comment, please raise your hand and we can allow you to unmute yourself as well. Thank you.
Yes, don't be shy. Feel free. We'll let it hang for a little bit if people want to raise their hands, and also please make use of the link to offer written comment if verbal public comment isn't your thing.
Senator Locke, we also have Christina Leach has also raised her hand to offer public comment.
Hello, sorry about that. Um, my question is, do we have something that you can show us studies wise of another state that may have done a um, school district that when you do the combined Red Clay, Brandywine, Wilmington, make it all one. Um, I would like to hear or see another school in another district how that went well, examples of how that was done well, having such a diverse population, because I feel like the diverse population, although is a great thing for our community, it's a very hard thing to teach to and to spread people all over. And I would love to see where maybe some examples of some school districts that did it right, that has the city culture and then with the suburb culture mixed that big.
Senator Locke, I don't see any additional raised hands at this time.
Okay. I did see one question posted about the link, so I think hopefully that was reposted to the chat, and everyone can see the link. We may have a QR code screen as well with a link to that form. But if no further comments? I think I see Ms. Stone's hand. And we certainly have time. So if Ms. Stone would like to offer a further comment, I think that's okay.
Oh, yeah, there we go. Sorry. This is a different question than the one I asked the first time. My question concerns funding and taxes, because I know that with the redistricting that we've just had, or not redistricting, the reassessment that we just had, taxes have gone up for some people and down for others. But there was a lot of consternation about it. And I'm a little concerned that a few years down the road, when we do this and the students are being added from the Christina School District, how will that impact the taxes for the existing residents that are left? I mean, because I don't really know what that portion is in relation to the tax base. And will the state be helping to support that as opposed to throwing it all on the residents? Thank you.
Hi, good evening. My name is Naya Cruz, and I just had a question. In all of the different committees that have been presented, has there been any thought to include representative of the local bargaining units? Because each one of these districts has various bargaining units that go beyond just the educators.
Thank you for your comment. I see there's another raised hand, but if you can come off mute and introduce yourself.
Hi, this is Bill Yordaus. Thank you for unmuting me. My question is related to after all of these redistricting is done, what is going to happen to the class sizes? And what is the maximum you're thinking, and what is actually the ideal, especially when this redistricting is done? Let's say it'll come into effect after what, 18 months, 24 months later. In this changing environment, the students are going to have particular needs, which would additionally require a smaller class size. So I'm really wondering what is happening to students. We heard other questions, but I really would like to understand, how are you going to maintain a desirable, let's put it that way, class size so all the children benefit? Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. And I will speak slowly in case anyone else wants to raise their hand. We can always continue public comment. But as we wait for that, I do want to express my gratitude for folks for sharing your comments and your questions, lots of questions. And I apologize that we're not doing direct response to the questions right now, but it is extremely helpful to us to see what concerns and gaps in our communication might be so far. And so definitely, stick with us. We're not going to just take them and ignore them. We will make sure that we are expressing more clearly and making sure you can get the answers to the questions that you have. And I see a new hand.
Hi, I'm Amy Hanish, and I'm an educator and also a parent. And my question is regarding when this occurs in every one of the models, the districts are going to be consolidated. How does that impact things like choice, where families can choose where their children want to go to school because of specific programming options or because of perceived needs, and schools that might be more accommodating to educational needs of students? Will choice still exist within this new consolidation plan? And how do families follow the state guidelines when all of these districts potentially would be consolidated or multiple ones would be consolidated?
Thank you for that. Um, it's really helpful to hear what are the most pressing things on folks' minds, and we definitely look forward to following up um, very shortly on those. We've had a couple questions about what comes next in terms of opportunities to either hear the presentation again or encourage others who weren't able to be here tonight to listen in and come and make their comments or ask additional questions. We are doing another one of these tomorrow evening, and we are not doing any next week during the holiday week, but then we will have a series of presentations being made at each school board through the first week or so of December, leading up to our December 16th full body meeting. So there will be those additional public opportunities to listen in associated with public comment opportunities as well. And again, please make liberal use of the feedback form. Grab that link, share it with others. We really absolutely want to hear what's on your mind in terms of concerns, questions, comments, preferences. Please send those our way. And if no one else would like to offer a public comment, I guess we can close out a little early. Maybe we'll just leave the QR code up until our official closing time in case anyone wants to, log in. They can see that. But again, we also have our email address that you can send any feedback and thoughts to as well. So again, just thank you. It's really nice to see folks here and to hear what's on your mind, and look forward to doing it again tomorrow evening and ongoing. So thank you so much.